Hello and welcome. This is going to be an astrology check-in and kind of also a little bit of a check-in on some upcoming portals that we have going on. It's a very interesting time. Even today, I feel like there's a lot of smaller portals and then some bigger portals happening. Like even today, 9/15/2020, that's 15 and let's see, 16, 17, 18, 19. Yeah. So we've got the devil and the sun, like the devil illuminated, bringing light into the darkness. And what's very interesting is that we're headed towards the pagan, well, it's kind of Sabbath, it's an Estabat of Mabon, which is September, 20th to the 22nd. And well, excuse me, it's like the 19th to the 22nd, kind of all encompassing in there because it follows the moons. And it's when there's a lot of different spiritual paths that have a similar thing, but I really appreciate the Wiccan version of it. It's basically when the god turns into an elder, and he impregnates the mother. She's not a maiden anymore. She's not yet the crone, but she's becoming the crone. But the god impregnates her, and then he dies. But he doesn't die as in like die. He goes back into spirit for a minute, and then he actually is reborn as Hades, who is kind of the beautiful beast in a way. He's the ruler of the underworld. He becomes shadow. He's still kind of there in a 5D sense, but he's not necessarily seen. He's kind of eclipsed from things, and the goddess as mother, she grieves, but she's also very happy too, knowing that she is pregnant. She's coming towards becoming the crone herself, which is very interesting too, because when you get towards Samhain, which is considered the witch's new year, and when the wheel starts over in terms of like seasonally rather than going by the Julian calendar, and that's when everything starts to die out. And because if you look at the story of Hades and Persephone, even this is when the agreement between Hades and Demeter happens, to where Persephone gets to go back down to the underworld with Hades and be in love with him. But Demeter, Mother Earth, is very sad, and so she brings winter upon all of us, and it does not change until Persephone is brought back up to the earth plane rather than the underworld, which has a lot of connotations to it. But one of the things I find interesting about what's coming up is there's an emphasis on the numbers 3 and trines and triple goddesses, especially astrologically. It's very interesting. And even Virgo is the sign of the virgin and the prostitute. So, like, there's a lot of feminine aspects. And part of me wants to kind of call this, I mean, it's Clash of the Titans going on astrologically, but it's also kind of rise of the goddess, rise of the Empress. And what's interesting is in a lot of, especially older spiritual paths, and even a lot of the reborn neo paths, there is an emphasis on how the feminine is a constant. Like, the god goes through being, he's a zygote, and then he's born as a child, and he grows, and then he dies, and he becomes he goes into 5D, and then he comes back and is reborn. But the goddess, she is a constant, even while the god is changing. Now, she does change. She grows, she's reborn, but she's reborn into a maiden rather than a child per se, and she becomes his mother, and then she turns into the mother, and then turns into the crone, and then becomes the maiden. And she's always kind of this constant flowing presence. She's the earth all around, and the god, turns into different things. He's the sky, he's the water, he's the shadow plane, he's death and rebirth, and the goddess is just always kind of constant. But we've seen throughout, especially this year, it's interesting being 2020. It's both the High Priestess and the Emperor. And if you've been on any sort of a twin flame journey, you probably noticed that a lot of feminines have been called away from relationships and to really work on their spiritual practices and their divinity. And there's been kind of a close up of communication. There's been a lot of a no contact situation. And then 2 and 2 is 4, which is the Emperor. And it's been a very masculine year up to this point, and which is why I find it interesting that, like, astrologically there's such an emphasis on 3s and trines. And even as we get towards Samhain, like even right now, some of the numbers coming in, we're seeing 21 come up a lot, which also equals 3, and the 21 is the world card, which is completions, chapters completing. And a lot of readers, I'm noticing, are tarot readers are seeing that come up in their readings, and many of them don't closely follow astrology. They do loosely, but it's interesting to see the connection between the two, and often even before I have updated myself as to what exactly is going on. Now, I wrote down some stuff, so if I'm looking at my little notes here, because we have something interesting coming up. It's called it's like a set of triple super new moons. Now, most of us have seen a super moon, like it's like a full moon that is really, really close to the earth, and it's really, really big, and often it'll be like orange or reddish color. But new moons are interesting. You don't usually see a new moon. That's why it's called a new moon. It's kind of like a mini eclipse. But we don't often see new moons that, well, of course we don't see a new moon that is super moon, but you often just don't see it line up to where there is a new moon that is that close to the earth, and you certainly don't often see it happen 3 consecutive times. So what we have in 2 days, on 9/17/2020, which numerologically equals to the number 17, the star, which is wish and guidance and following your heart, and the number 21, the world card, right? And it's going to be a new moon in Virgo while the sun is still in Virgo, so we have emphasis on that Virgo aspect. And Virgo is the Virgin, and it's also ruled by the goddess Vesta, which is an asteroid also. And Vesta is the goddess of thresholds, where you're in that middle point to where you're not your old self anymore, but you're not new anymore. And interestingly enough, it is because of Vesta that a lot of people follow the marriage tradition of the masculine carrying the feminine over the threshold, because she is, that's Vesta. She in all the doorways, all the gateways, all things like that midpoint between like when you're uncommitted to commitment, that midway point in there, that initiation status. She's also the goddess of initiations, and she's funny. She's considered a phallic goddess. She is a virgin, but she's one of the most sexual goddesses also. So it's very interesting. One of my favorite parts about her mythology is that it's said that she is that she impregnated the mother of Romulus and Remus, who ended up creating Rome, which is good and bad, but that she ended up doing it by leaving a wooden phallus in the hearth, because she's also the goddess of the hearth, of the castle of the mother of Romulus and Remus. And the mother used basically the wooden dildo and didn't realize that it was going to impregnate her, but she couldn't get pregnant by her husband or anything else, and it's said that is what birthed all that. So I mean, and she's a very androgynous goddess too, so it really I love how it emulates that femininity is not necessarily like genital related. But in any case, it's fun stuff to look up if you want to look it up. But that's a lot of that energy. I almost want to call it Vesta's Gate. Maybe that's what I'll call it. So 9/17, it's 2 days away from now that the first super new moon happens. The next one will be next month in Libra season. It'll be Libra new moon with the Libra sun. and it'd be kind of Justice Gate, and or Venus's Gate, maybe call it that. And then it'll be the Scorpio new moon while the sun is in Scorpio. And then right after that is interesting. Right after that, we have the blue moons, which is 2 full moons. And typically you don't see them line right up next to each other, but if I have my dates correct, then it should be on the 29th and the 31st that we'll have 2 full moons lining up right with Halloween. Isn't that interesting? 3 consecutive super new moons. So like they're eclipses effectively. They're resets. They're releasing of energy. And then we have 2 full moons, which are like the buildup of energy, like really big, powerful buildup. And those are good times to release, whereas new moons are good times to set your intention because it is reborn. But then after the new moons in December, in Sagittarius season, we have another new moon, supermoon. Yeah, and I haven't looked past that one yet, but on top of all that sort of energy going on, this is really interesting. I'm kind of excited about it because although it's definitely Clash of the Titans between all of these different signs, it means a lot of coming changes and a lot of very interesting things for everybody. But right now we have Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter all in Capricorn. Now Saturn has been retrograde since I believe it was May 10th. I'll have to go back and look, but it is about to go direct. Now Jupiter just went direct yesterday. It was in Capricorn, so now it's back in Capricorn. It's gone direct. It'll take it a little while and it'll go towards Aquarius, but right now it has gone direct. That means expansion. And Jupiter is like Big Daddy. It's the husband planet, and it's about spiritual expansion. And it's very interesting that it has gone direct while these other planets that usually create limitations like Saturn and Pluto, when they are direct, we actually see a lot more limitations, a lot more illusions and masks and things like that. They're actually still retrograde. And so Jupiter going direct while they're still retrograde means an expansion of the truth and bringing clarity and things like that, which is a lot of our keywords for this Virgo new moon coming up in 2 days, as well as the time coming towards it. And especially as we get towards Samhain with those blue moons, there's a lot of clarity, a lot of crumbling of the past, a lot of releasing of toxic situations, really going deep in a spiritual sense. And because Jupiter rules Sagittarius, and it's like the explorer, the challenger and stuff, and really getting deep into that. And because we have so many, we actually have it's interesting, all of these new moons will be trine to Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn, all in Capricorn. So even though the moon will be in different signs, they'll be in a trine, a triangle to these moons. So that's an emphasis on both the support and the influence of Capricorn, which is like, it's the World card, it's completion, it's in its masculine trait, it's the King of Pentacles, and in its feminine trait, there's a lot of it in there. It's the Devil card, it's also the Queen of Pentacles, and it's a lot about breaking old limitations, breaking the bonds, breaking our old ways of thinking, and embracing the new, which is a lot of what's coming up. But I did a reading for all signs yesterday where I think I titled it like "Walk through the door with your head held high or be dragged through the mud." Like that's a lot of this emphasis, and Capricorn can be very much like that, and Capricorn is a big lesson teacher because it's ruled by Saturn, and it has everything to do with karma. So still we see a great emphasis on karma in triplicate, right? And again, that's 3. That's the Empress card, and it's such an emphasis on that. So it's interesting that we have that, the planet of expansion and enlightenment and spirituality, plus Pluto, which is Hades, it's Scorpio ruled, and that's like depth, and it's being emphasized by Neptune in Pisces, which is exalted. So really looking at imagination and illusion and challenging reality, because reality is not always what it seems even. And then Saturn, which is like granddaddy time, karma, things like that. And because those 2 planets are going to be Pluto's going to be staying retrograde for a little while, but Saturn this month, I believe on the 29th, is going to be going direct, and it'll stay in Capricorn But going direct, that means that we start to see more of that you reap what you sow energy, and especially coming upon Mabon, which is kind of the pagan Thanksgiving. It's the harvest, but we see a lot of that you reap what you sow energy. And so that karmic energy really starts to come around. It's almost like, oh, in a weird way of saying, by having Saturn retrograde with all these other planets retrograde, it's like when, as a parent, sometimes you let your kids just go ahead and make the messes that they're going to make. If they're being impetuous and you're not going to fight with them, you just let them make their messes, and then you just let the messes sit, and they learn on their own that if they don't want to be in that mess, they have to clean it up. They have to own it. Nobody else made that mess for them. And so that's kind of the energy that I'm sensing is going to be coming up from a lot of this, especially as we get towards the equinox, which is Mabon, which is Jupiter's bringing in that clarity, that Ace of Swords energy that's like pointing out, like, nobody else made these messes for you. Even if simply by being with somebody who creates messes around you, you still had a choice. You still had the ability to decide to do better for yourself, to be intentional about your spiritual growth, your physical growth, things like that. And if you didn't, you really cannot blame anybody else for that. And so it's kind of been like since May-ish that even the planets have been like, we're gonna take a step back. We're just gonna let you kind of make these messes. We might be a little mischievous in here and create some communication delays, and even, in a way, it's like spirit coming in saying, I'm gonna remove the communication that you had with the people that you've been blaming or that you've been giving credit to for the good stuff even, and I'm going to remove the restrictions that normally kept you from getting into trouble, kind of like, parents saying like, okay, I'll let you walk outside barefoot. I'm giving you a strong warning that you might get a sliver, you might hurt yourself on a rock, but I will let you learn that lesson, and then letting you go out and learn that lesson on your own. And then when you come back and you're like, I got a sliver in my toe, and you got to, use tweezers or something to get that sliver out, and it's painful and it sucks, but you learn from that. And I'm hearing the song in my head, I Wish You Pain by Andy Grammer, which is a really beautiful song about, sometimes pain is how we grow. But you still have to be intentional about it. If you hold on to the pain for the reward of feeling like a victim, you don't grow. But if you look at the pain as contrast, if you look at the separations and the spaces and the challenges and things like that as an opportunity to grow, you don't ever experience that stuff again. You get higher quality of problems in your life, which is really where you want to go, right? Now we have... Currently, Mercury is in Libra, which is very interesting. It's a lot of communication about justice and balance and karma, interestingly enough. And also a lot of communication and thinking about love, because Libra is ruled by Venus. Interestingly enough, though, Venus is currently in Leo, which is kind of an expansion of that like inner child, a desire to have fun, to show off, to kind of make it about yourself a little bit, because Leo is one of the signs of individuality. Like its opposite is Aquarius, which is the group. And so Leo is very much, it's about me, and it's the rec room in a house. It's where you play and you learn. And so Venus is really calling us to be much more playful in love, and to look at, if we're in a relationship where we don't feel like we're having fun, there's an emphasis on getting out of those relationships, whether that's romantic or friendship, and even to a degree business-wise. And I said, like, we have Neptune and Pisces too, which actually emphasizes it emphasizes both of them, like the need to have fun, especially in love, the need to feel nurtured in love, and the need to talk about balance and justice and like releasing the past, but also in a weird sort of way feeling like we've been appropriately punished for past transgressions, whether by ourselves or by others, things like that. But what I'm really feeling is that I want to say, well, okay, so I want to say starting on 9/16, which is tomorrow, which is a Tower a tower day especially, and then coming towards that new moon and coming towards all these planets starting to come out of retrograde, that we're starting to release the past that we have been holding against ourselves. Now, I know a lot of folks who've been on twin flame journey, especially divine feminines, has already been working on that, but you might see a little bit more release of that, or you might see others around you who have started their journey more recently getting into that. But actually, this is much more of the masculines releasing that. And even if you're not in a twin flame journey, you might notice your masculine counterpart is doing a lot of shadow work. I mean, that change over into the shadowy Hades side, it's kind of like being faced with your mortality and really looking at, like, is this the life that I really want to live? Is this the kind of emperor that I really want to be? And being, kind of struggling against age and mortality and being extra childish and feeling all of this, almost like masculines are feeling the extra strength of cosmic Empress energy coming in a weird sort of way. And it's like they're fighting against that because they feel like they're powerless if the feminine is stronger, which isn't actually true, and it's actually going to help them heal mother wounds. And either way, they're going to do that shadow work. But you might notice a lot more masculines around you, or if you are a very masculine energy-wise feminine, that you're kind of doing a lot of shadow work, and you're going, or if you've not healed some of your masculine sides of things, that is going to be emphasized on needing to work on. You might feel like taking a lot of action, but you can't, because Mars is in Aries retrograde, and it's also going to meet up with Chiron, which is also retrograde in Aries, and it's meeting up I want to say in about a week, and that's ego. Aries is the emperor, but it's also ego, and because it is retrograde, it's like the emperor reversed. And I think what this is saying is we're going to see a lot of masculine energy coming up and releasing, so that the feminine can shine, so the justice can come to the feminine. And there's going to be a lot of agitation, a lot of aggression, and a lot of insecurities really being brought out, especially because as we get closer to October, to Samhain and Halloween, the veils between dimensions start to get very, very thin. And some of you have already been noticing timeline shifts. In and out of timelines is happening a little bit more, a little bit faster. Karma is manifesting faster, and with Jupiter having expanded, the things that we think about are manifesting even faster. And there's an emphasis on the saying, you don't manifest what you want, you manifest what you are, and you manifest what you think about. And it's very similar to, like, children don't listen to what you say, they do what you do, they feel how you feel. It's very similar to that, and what we need to really remember is that if we're not taking an intentional approach to growth, especially because Jupiter is all about growth, and especially right now, while we have Saturn in retrograde releasing limitations and restrictions, and Pluto in retrograde releasing the typical illusions for things, and actually opening up magic, especially with Neptune exalted in Pisces. That's more magic energy in there. And if we're not intentionally using that for good, we are earning negative karma, or at least being neutral in it. And that means that when you get that reap what you sow energy, it's unfortunately it's going to be more of the same of whatever you've been practicing, which is fortunate and unfortunate. If you've been practicing working on your growth and being charitable just to be charitable, and being authentic and truthful and clear, and you've been working on releasing control, releasing codependencies, the need to be connected to others all the time, the need to, like, bully people into doing what you want, or like feeling like if you don't control things or you don't push people that nothing's going to happen. If you've been working on releasing all of that, you'll see more of that, but actually you'll find that you don't have to effort as much to it. That's what you start to reap what you sow. You might even see your money start to pick up, especially because these signs going direct in Capricorn, that's the house. It's funny because it's the most feminine sign, but it's the house of the father. And is the 10th house, and it's about office. It's the office in a house, and it's like government and rules and things like that. But it is also the social architect. It's the sign that climbs the ladder and doesn't, well, when it's evolved and upright, it doesn't step on people on the way up, but it also stands in its power and allows itself to be recognized for its power. And so, like, for example, if you've been doing YouTube channels to help others heal or readings, you might see an expansion of growth in those. Or if you've been writing, or you've been working at rescues or things like that, you might start to see a greater abundance come in for you from that groundwork you've been setting while Jupiter was retrograde. And for those that have been being, part of me hates to say it, but it's growth, and everybody who's going to go through the shadowy side of this is going to get to a point to where they'll appreciate it later. So, but unfortunately, if you've not been doing your shadow work, if you've been avoiding it, it's going to heighten right now. You're going to get more of what you put in during this time while Jupiter was retrograde and Saturn was retrograde, and as they start to go direct, especially while we have Mars retrograde and things like that, you're going to probably feel like, okay, if you haven't done your shadow work, you're probably going to feel like, why is this happening to me? Why is the world crapping on me? I've been doing my work. I worked extra hard. I did this and that. Why am I broke? Why is my relationship not working? Why? But Saturn and Jupiter are, and Neptune and Pluto, the clash of the Titans in here, are going to come in and show you, well, did you put away money to save, or did you make the excuse that you didn't have any when you actually did, and now you don't have any because you don't have the work coming in, and you didn't save? Or were you with people that were spending away all your money? Or were you giving yourself too many cheat days? Or it's gonna bring it in, and the emphasis is on enlightenment because of Jupiter, and it's going to point out to you where you need to grow, not where other people need to grow. So there's definitely an emphasis on self, especially with Chiron in Aries. It's all about looking at how you identify and manifesting what you are. If you are the type of person that blames others, you're going to be having people blame you. If you are the type of person that is accountable, then you're going to find others who are also accountable and who appreciate you being accountable. If you are the type of person who doesn't prepare for the winter